Hey up buddies, my name's Kat, I'm an independent illustrator and today we're going to experiment with Copic ink. I really want to know if we can make this alcohol-based, evaporates pretty much immediately ink work like wet on wet watercolours. Can we do it? Who knows? Will I fail? Probably. Come with me for the ride. Roll the intro where you see some of my actual artwork and maybe it might make you stay to see the end of this because I'm okay at art sometimes. So today I'm going to talk you guys through pretty much everything I did, my thought process, experimenting with this idea.
Hey, this is Editing Cat. I think I should probably define some things here. So if you're not aware, wet on wet when using watercolors is when you have a wet page and you put wet media, so paint, on top, and it kind of like blurs and blends and sort of spreads throughout the page using the water as its vehicle.
And today I'm going to talk about everything I did wrong. So you guys can learn from my mistakes and you don't have to make them. I'll do a part 2 coming in a couple of days where I went back in and pretty much built upon everything I'd learnt the first time round. And that one I'll sort of talk you through all of the things I learnt and things that you can try at home. And then I'll show you some of the like full-fledged artworks that I've used this in since. And I can guarantee it's something really fun to use and just something that I've really enjoyed incorporating. It's not really something you normally see with alcohol markers. So today, come learn with my mistakes, come learn from my mistakes. Let's get into it. So here's everything I thought I could conceivably need to complete or maybe successfully do something in this project. I was sort of brainstorming this for months in my head before I even got started on it. So first up, I've got Express-It blending pad. Express-It blending card. This is what I religiously use. So I figured I would start with this. Maybe it's the right paper for this project, maybe it's not. Next is a cellulose sponge. This is just your typical one from the kitchen. I picked yellow because I was worried maybe the colours would leach out with the alcohol, but turns out not an issue, at least not with the yellow. So my current thought process was I would use this like a wet palette, like you would do with like acrylics or oils. You sort of have like a wet sponge in the back so it actually physically can't dry or evaporate in this case.
Editing Cat again. And what I'm talking about here is a stay wet palette, where you put your acrylics or oil paints, the actual palette, over a wet sponge in a box, like a sealed box, and it keeps your palette wet so you can come back and use it again later rather than having to waste paint essentially that you haven't finished using yet.
And I'm going to use the rubbing alcohol here, the Isocool. This one comes with a spray head already, so like it's ideal. And I'm just going to like drench the sponge with the Isocool and then pop the paper on top and then drench that too. And then hopefully, in theory, it won't be able to evaporate enough. And then I can go in with these brushes. So these, I actually picked makeup brushes because I thought I needed something that was really dense and really fluffy to get like that, I guess like fluffy, blurry effect that I want. Like I'm sort of gearing towards using this as like a depth of field in a photograph, but in a drawing. So this is your alcohol ink. I showed you a little bit. These are obviously the old ones. You can definitely get a new version now. It's the same thing. It just looks different in different packaging. I just don't have any on me. So here we go. Drenching this. I probably could have even turned it over and drenched the back, but this was fine. This is fine. Pop that on top. Drench that one up too. I really, now that I like filming it, you can see I miss patches. So annoyingly, I would have tried to make that all wet, not just like little sections. But here we go. So my first mistake was I picked the wrong brush. As you can see, I'm kind of expecting it to like bloom out like it would in watercolors, but it's actually sort of like pulling in on itself and like recoiling. So I tried to kind of like brush around with it, which was a mistake too, because essentially I'm drawing with it at that point and it's sort of, you know, sections aren't, you can see down in the left corner there, like I let that dry just a bit too long and now it's like that line's there forever. So, you know, my brush is too small for the space that I wanted to do this with and it's not fluffy and dense enough. But I persevered. I was sort of experimenting with putting some of the rubbing alcohol in the brush to kind of like blend it into the back. Oh, I forgot about that. A moment's silence for how much that ink that I just spilled probably cost. Anyway, at this point, I wanted to show you just how like wet this paper is. So you can see it's pretty soaked. You can see also because I'm going in and spraying a lot on top of it, it's sort of leaving those sort of mottly textures, which I really like. But if you want to do something that's less textured, you need to make the decision straight away on what you're going to do. You can't keep going in and respraying it because that's what's going to get your mottled effect. So anyway, I'm going in with this big foundation brush and I'm kind of treating it like a stippling brush, just to see what kind of textures I can get out of it. And I didn't really consider much else what else I could do with it at that point, and decided I was just going to go in with another color and see what would happen if I kind of did like a blending gradient effect. Silly me, going in with the brush that doesn't work again. Clearly haven't learnt that much yet. The other problem I found too was because I was quite, I guess, scared of, scared? I didn't really know how much I could push the colour, so I went in with quite light colours and had to get a bit bolder to actually be able to see them properly. So you'll see a little bit later I actually go in with like a bit of a pink. Here's where I kind of realise that I can blend with the blending brush that if you use makeup, you blend with. So I'm realizing now that if I sort of go in with this fluffy brush, I can essentially blend out the sides, and I'm using like quite a like press down and pull up on like a slight angle effect. If you do foundation, it's essentially putting foundation on. And I'm getting a little bit more bold with colours here. We're getting there. We're learning. I don't know why. Yeah, there we go. I've given up. I'm like, just put all the colour on now at this point. And I'm not as scared because now I've realised that this brush, sort of when you put it down, and considering that was such a puddle, I guess, of pigment, it's not a problem because this brush is so dense. It's actually picking a lot of it up within the bristles anyway, and it's probably wasting a little bit, but you sort of, want to get that effect. So you sort of have to sacrifice a little bit, I suppose. Now I'm getting a bit bolder. I'm going in with an R20, which is it's usually my like blush color if I'm doing portraits. And I'm not as scared now because I've realized that I can get this sort of nice gradient blending effect with the foundation brush. And it's not like a stippling effect now, like that's quite a light sort of tap. This is more, I'm like pushing it in a little bit and up, so I'm like, I don't know. That makes sense to me. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. Anyway, so I've let it dry a little bit now. I haven't sprayed anything else on it and I'm going in with green. So these are going to be leaves that are in the far distance, like pushed really far back in the image. And I'm letting them blur out a little bit, but I'm not spraying it to the point where it's going to like blend right out. And here I've worked out what to do with the little brushes. They're good for pulling back. So if you put too much on and it's still soaking in, you can actually go in with a dry brush, a nice sort of hard dry brush, and pull it back out again, like you would in watercolors. Now, don't quote me on that for like really dark colors. It is probably the darker your color, the less likely that's going to work. I'll have to workshop that. I also worked out at this point that if I wanted to blend out an edge but not really like blend it straight out, I could use those hard dry brushes as well, and just blend out the very, very edge of the wet pat. Oh god, this is all of these. These are gonna sound bad as sound bites, but the it doesn't matter. It's all gonna sound bad. The wet section that you put on, just the edge, if you sort of blend that out. it works with a dry brush. Here's where I made a huge mistake. So this has got more pigment than I've used before, and I was silly and I did not bother to spray that top bit again. So I went in, and you can see where the brush strokes, because it's drying and evaporating as I'm putting it down, you can see where the lines are. And I sort of went in and tried to blend it out, and there was just no hope. Now you can see where I'm putting these ones down, it's the same color, but because I've now sprayed the area, they're blending out better. So the darker color you use, the more you have to, here's me trying to fix it. Like, I'll put more on and just blend out those edges. It doesn't work. The thing I learned from that was I really needed to make sure that the darker the color you're using, the more careful you have to be about how saturated the paper is. It's more obvious the darker the color that you haven't blended correctly, and there's no saving it once that happens. Yeah, you can see here, like you can see like the lines sort of where it's sort of finished, I guess blurring, and there's no blur, like it's just yeah, there's no blending that back in. So I just kind of left it, as you can see, like the bottom ones are much nicer. That's because I resaturated and resprayed the page before I did those. So just pretend that bit's not there. So now I've let the page dry a bit more, because now I do want my next lot, which are leaves, more leaves. I do want them to be a bit more what's the word I want? Have a sharper edge, I suppose, because they're closer to the camera again. And I'm letting them blend out a little bit. I'm not so worried about blurring those edges out. I'm letting them on their own sort of expand, and then once they're starting to dry a little bit, I'm going in and blending them in with the hard brush. And with these, because I wanted the center of it to be like the darker, deeper part of the leaf, I'm sort of adding the pigment there and letting it sort of balloon out on its own. And as you can see, I didn't even mention, I've taken it off the sponge now too, because I don't want it to be really saturated on the back. I noticed too, now I'm going in with like a much smaller, dense, fluffy brush, and I noticed with the sort of darker colors too, you can just sort of, like I was doing with the big one, just like patting in the little edges, and that can give you a much tighter but really nice blurry effect. And I'm just doing the same thing here with, like, I guess they're like little wattle flowers, and I'm going in with that sort of dense brush and sort of really packing it in. So now I've let it dry. Well, I should have let it dry. Actually, maybe this is the biggest mistake I made. I don't know. One of the two really silly things I did with this one. I was too impatient, and I didn't let the paper dry completely before I went in with markers. And the problem with that was that they didn't blend like how I was used to them blending, and they became quite streaky. And they were kind of still, I guess, sort of expanding a little bit and sinking sort of out onto the page. So as you can see here, like you can sort of see the streakiness and like the lines where I've left them, rather than like how a Copic would normally react and sort of blend in on itself. I did work out, because the paper's still a bit wet, I can sort of dab it with my finger, but it's not really the effect that I was hoping for. And you can also see, because there's rubbing alcohol, it works, it's almost identical to like the colorless blender, and if you put colorless blender on dark colors, it makes it really mottled looking, and you can see that that's happening here with the leaves as I'm drawing them on. It's just mottled, it's not like a nice flat color, a nice sort of sturdy color. So yes, don't be me, and practice some patience and let your page actually dry. I think the other thing that was working against me here too is because as I was mentioning before, I just kept going in and spraying because I didn't really have a plan, I guess. And it seems the more I sprayed the page, the texture of the page became different, and so it wasn't a nice smooth hard paper anymore, which is why the Express It blending card works so well. It sort of became a bit more textured, and I think the integrity of the surface was compromised as well. So I think my takeaway from that is you really want to make sure that the paper's not being saturated constantly. You want to sort of make an informed decision, spray it. This is the... My dog's barking outside. Wait! So yeah, you want to make sure that you know, like it's gonna, you know, this is the time that I'm spraying it to do this layer, and then you let that dry. Or you, I guess not let it dry immediately. Then this is the spray for this layer, this is the spray for this layer. But theoretically, if you spray it once and it just dries gradually as you're doing each layer, you shouldn't compromise the surface of the page as much. Yeah, see, I'm trying to blend here and it's just not working. Like you can see, it's not, this is not alcohol markers anymore. This is a whole extra new beast. But we're making it work. I kind of went in on these flowers multiple times, and I'm just like using different types of colors to try and semi blend them. I don't want them to blend entirely, just to give it that sort of depth effect that it's like a ball of fluff. So you can kind of see bits behind it, you can kind of see bits further in front of it. And yeah, the more sort of colors, the better. So that's the finished piece. I went in later and didn't film because I totally forgot, with a white gel pen just to see if I could bring that first layer forward and make it really hyper focus. I was very quick with it and very messy, but it sort of, it gives you the idea of how you would do it properly. And actually the back is really cool, and I almost want to do, like, see how that's like extra blurry and just like sort of fluffy? I really want to like maybe do that and then like draw on that side. Another experiment for another time. And this is the other piece. So if you want to see this one be done and learn some things that I learned that actually work and things that you could implement in your own practice, come back. Yeah, look, I haven't unpacked my studio yet, alright? So if you want to see all the things I learned from that and made this guy instead of this guy, feel free to come back for part 2 in a couple of days. And I'll show you guys in depth a lot of other stuff that I've used this this technique on in like proper artworks and sort of how you can implement it in your own work. If you want to see all of my finished artwork and various other things I get up to, you can find me on all the other social medias at Cat Art Illustrations. And I'd love to see you there. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you later. I don't know how to end this video. Bye! Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Oh, I forgot to put my Copic witch hat on. It doesn't really go over space buns anyway. Wait. Can you see? Oh yeah, there she is.